Chapter 1. Rome, the heart of the greatest empire. At the height of its power, Rome was not just a city. It was the beating heart of a world-spanning empire, a place where millions of lives, ambitions, fears, and dreams collided every single day. As the sun rose over the 7 hills, its golden light reflected off marble temples, towering columns, and endless stone streets that seemed to stretch forever. This was the center of the known world, and everyone knew it. Rome, in its prime, was massive beyond imagination. More than 1 million people lived within its walls. Senators and slaves, merchants and soldiers, priests and criminals, all packed into a city that never truly slept. The air was filled with noise, the clatter of wagon wheels on stone roads, the shouts of vendors selling bread and olives, the distant roar of crowds gathering for entertainment. Every street told a story of power. Water flowed through the city like veins through a body. Aqueducts carried fresh water from distant hills, feeding fountains, bathhouses, and private homes. Clean water was a luxury few civilizations had mastered, yet Rome delivered it on a scale the world had never seen before. Public baths were not just places to wash. They were social centers where politics were discussed, deals were made, and rumors spread like wildfire. At the heart of Rome stood its monuments, symbols of dominance carved in stone. The Roman Forum buzzed with life, surrounded by temples, government buildings, and statues of long-dead heroes. Senators debated laws that affected lands thousands of miles away. Decisions made here could mean prosperity for a province, or its destruction. Rome did not whisper its authority, it shouted it. Towering above the city were temples dedicated to countless gods. Religion was woven into everyday life, not just as faith, but as control. Sacrifices were offered, rituals performed, and omens carefully watched. The people believed Rome was favored by the gods, and as long as the gods were pleased, the empire would endure. But beneath the marble beauty lay harsh realities. Rome was a city of extremes. While the elite lived in luxurious villas with gardens and servants, the poor crowded into unstable apartment buildings known as insulae. Fires were common. Disease spread quickly. Life expectancy was short. Yet still, people came from every corner of the empire, drawn by opportunity, protection, and the promise of Roman citizenship. The streets themselves were a testament to Roman genius. Perfectly engineered roads allowed armies, messengers, and traders to move with terrifying efficiency. All roads lead to Rome was not a metaphor. It was a fact. From Britain's cold frontiers to the deserts of the East, everything eventually flowed back to this city. Rome's power was visible everywhere. Soldiers marched through the streets, their armor gleaming, reminding the population who truly kept order. Prisoners of war were paraded as trophies. Foreign ambassadors walked carefully, aware that one wrong word spoken here could seal the fate of their homelands. Yet Rome was not only about domination. It was a city of ideas, law, and ambition. Roman law shaped society, defining rights, duties, and punishments. Citizenship meant protection, status, and privilege. To be Roman was to belong to something eternal, or so it seemed. As night fell, torches lit the streets and the city transformed again. Taverns filled with laughter and arguments. Poets recited verses. Conspiracies were whispered in dark corners. Somewhere behind palace walls, power struggles quietly unfolded, invisible to the masses. This was Rome at its height, confident, overwhelming, and seemingly unstoppable. A city that believed it would rule forever. But even at its strongest moment, unseen cracks were already forming beneath the marble surface, and to understand how this empire truly worked, we must step deeper inside. Chapter 2. The Emperor and the Machinery of Power. At the center of the Roman Empire stood one man, the emperor. To the people, he was more than a ruler. He was the living symbol of Rome itself. His face appeared on coins, his name echoed in prayers, and his decisions shaped the lives of millions who would never see him in person. From his palace on the Palatine Hill, the emperor ruled a world stretching across continents. Yet absolute power did not mean absolute peace. The emperor's day began long before sunrise. Courtiers, advisors, generals, and petitioners gathered outside his chambers, each waiting for a moment of attention. Some brought reports from distant provinces. Others brought accusations, requests, or warnings of rebellion. Every conversation mattered. A single decision could start a war, crush a rival, or secure loyalty for generations. Rome was governed not by chaos, but by a vast and carefully maintained machine. Beneath the emperor stood an army of officials, governors, tax collectors, magistrates, and administrators. Each province was expected to obey Roman law, collect taxes, and maintain order, all while answering directly to the emperor. Efficiency was survival. Failure meant replacement, or worse. The Senate still existed, filled with wealthy aristocrats who claimed to represent Rome's ancient traditions. Publicly, senators debated laws and offered advice. Privately, many plotted, whispered, and waited. While emperors held supreme authority, they ignored the Senate at their own risk. A ruler without elite support rarely lasted long. History had already proven that emperors could fall just as easily as they rose. Fear was a constant companion of power. Palace walls hid luxury, but also paranoia. Guards were everywhere. Food was tasted before it reached the emperor's table. Trusted allies could become enemies overnight. Assassination was not a rare event. It was an expected danger of the throne. To rule Rome was to live under the shadow of betrayal. Law was one of Rome's greatest weapons. Roman legal codes brought order to a vast empire of different cultures and traditions. Courts settled disputes. Contracts were enforced. Punishments were swift and public. Justice was not always fair, but it was consistent, and consistency kept rebellion in check. People obeyed Rome not just out of fear, but because its system worked. Taxes fueled everything. Gold, silver, grain, and goods flowed into Rome from conquered lands. Provinces paid for their own occupation, funding roads, armies, and imperial projects. In return, Rome offered protection, trade, and stability. It was a deal many accepted, even if they resented it. The emperor also controlled the army, the true foundation of power. Generals pledged loyalty to him, not to the state. Soldiers swore oaths in his name. A popular emperor inspired devotion. A weak one invited rebellion. History showed again and again that emperors often rose from the ranks of the military, and fell by it too. Public image mattered just as much as authority. Emperors staged grand ceremonies, distributed free grain, and sponsored games to maintain popularity. Coins displayed their strength. Statues portrayed them as gods among men. The message was clear. Rome was strong because its emperor was strong. Yet ruling such a massive empire came at a cost. Decisions were delayed by distance. Messages took weeks or months to arrive. Governors abused power far from Rome's watchful eye. Corruption quietly spread through the system. The machine still worked, but it groaned under its own weight. Behind the golden marble, the emperor was trapped by the empire he commanded. He could not step outside its demands. He could not trust easily. Every victory created new responsibilities. Every conquest expanded the borders that had to be defended. The emperor ruled the world, but the world also ruled him. And while power was forged in palaces and laws, it was the ordinary people of Rome who felt its impact every day. To understand the true cost of empire, we must leave the halls of power and walk into the lives of those who lived beneath it. Chapter 3. Life of Ordinary Romans. Beyond the palaces and marble temples, the true Roman Empire lived in the homes, streets, and struggles of its ordinary people. While emperors ruled and senators debated, millions of men, women, and children worked, suffered, and survived under the shadow of Rome's greatness. Their lives were not recorded in statues or triumphs, yet they were the foundation of the empire. Most Romans lived far from luxury. In the crowded city, families packed into multi-story apartment buildings called insulae. These structures were cheaply built and dangerously unstable. Fires spread quickly. Upper floors were cramped, dark, and stifling, while the lower levels, more expensive, had better access to water and light. For the poor, daily life was a constant risk. Food was simple and repetitive. Bread was the core of survival, often distributed freely by the state to prevent unrest. Olives, cheese, and watered-down wine were common. Meat was rare for most, a luxury saved for festivals or special occasions. Hunger was never far away, and a failed harvest could mean disaster. Work defined identity. Farmers labored in fields owned by wealthy elites, producing grain that fed Rome and its armies. Craftsmen shaped metal, pottery, and tools in small workshops. Merchants filled the streets with goods from across the empire: spices, cloth, wine, and exotic items from distant lands. Trade kept Rome alive, and ordinary people kept trade moving. Slavery was everywhere. Slaves were not a single group, but millions of individuals taken from conquered territories or born into bondage. Some worked in mines or fields under brutal conditions. Others served in homes, shops, or schools. A skilled slave might live better than a free poor citizen, but freedom itself remained uncertain. Slaves were property, lives measured by profit. Yet Roman society was not entirely without opportunity. A slave could sometimes earn or be granted freedom, becoming a freedman. Though freedmen lacked full political rights, many became successful merchants or administrators. Social mobility was limited, but not impossible. Rome rewarded loyalty and usefulness. Family life followed strict traditions. The father held legal authority over the household, controlling finances, marriages, and even life and death decisions. Women managed homes and businesses, but had limited legal power. Children were raised to respect hierarchy, discipline, and duty, values that mirrored the empire itself. Entertainment offered escape from hardship. Public games, races, and spectacles were free, designed to distract and control the population. The roar of the crowd in the Colosseum united rich and poor alike, if only for a moment. Violence became entertainment, and survival became spectacle. Religion shaped daily routines. People prayed to household gods for protection, health, and success. Temples filled the city. Rituals marked every stage of life. Faith was personal, but also political. Loyalty to Rome's gods meant loyalty to Rome. Health and sanitation were fragile. While aqueducts supplied clean water, waste disposal remained a challenge. Disease spread quickly in crowded neighborhoods. Doctors existed, but medicine was limited. Life expectancy was short. Survival often depended on luck. Despite hardship, Romans took pride in being Roman. Citizenship meant protection, identity, and belonging. Even the poorest citizens believed they were part of something greater, an empire destined to rule the world. These ordinary lives powered Rome's economy, filled its armies, and upheld its traditions. Without them, marble temples would crumble and legions would fade. But Rome did not rely on citizens alone. Its strength was enforced by steel, discipline, and fear. To understand how the empire held itself together, we must now follow the men who defended its borders. and expanded them. Chapter 4. The Roman Army, backbone of the empire. The Roman Empire did not rise on marble and laws alone. It rose on iron, discipline, and the relentless march of its army. Wherever Rome ruled, the footprints of its soldiers came first. From mist-covered forests to scorching deserts, the Roman legion was the empire's most feared and respected force, a machine designed for conquest and control. A Roman soldier was not simply a warrior, he was a professional. Recruited for long years of service, trained relentlessly, and bound by oath to the emperor, the legionnaire lived a life shaped by discipline. Every day followed strict routines, marching, drilling, weapon practice, and construction. Even in enemy territory, soldiers built fortified camps with walls, trenches, and gates, a temporary city rising overnight. Training was brutal. Recruits carried heavy packs, marched for miles, and practiced with wooden weapons heavier than the real ones. Weakness was punished, endurance was rewarded. The Roman army did not rely on individual strength, but unity. Soldiers moved as one, fought as one, and died as one. Weapons were simple but devastatingly effective. The short sword was designed for stabbing in close combat, heavy shields locked together to form an unbreakable wall. Javelins were thrown to break enemy formations before the clash. Roman tactics overwhelmed foes who relied on raw courage alone. Against Rome, bravery was not enough. Legions were stationed across the empire's vast borders, guarding rivers, mountains, and distant frontiers. Life on the edge of civilization was harsh. Soldiers faced cold winters, unfamiliar lands, and constant threats from raids and rebellions. Many never returned home. Rome expanded, but its borders demanded blood, yet service offered opportunity. Soldiers earned regular pay, food, and a sense of purpose. After years of loyalty, veterans were granted land or citizenship. For many poor men, the army was a path to stability, even honor. Rome rewarded those who defended it. The presence of the army was also psychological. Forts and watchtowers reminded locals who held power. Rebellions were crushed swiftly and publicly. Entire cities could be destroyed as warnings. Mercy existed, but only when obedience was assured. Rome ruled not just through force, but through fear of that force. Generals held enormous influence. A successful commander earned glory, loyalty, and sometimes the throne itself. History proved again and again that legions often followed their general before they followed Rome. Civil wars erupted when armies clashed not against enemies, but against each other. The army built more than destruction. Soldiers constructed roads, bridges, and forts that connected the empire. These roads allowed trade, communication, and control. The empire moved at the pace of its legions. Religion followed the army. Soldiers prayed to war gods, carried sacred symbols, and performed rituals before battle. Victory was seen as divine approval. Defeat demanded explanation or blame. But even Rome's mighty army was not invincible. Endless expansion stretched supply lines thin. Maintaining distant borders drained resources. Enemies adapted. Over time, discipline weakened, loyalty fractured, and cracks appeared in the once perfect machine. Still, at its height, the Roman army stood unmatched. Disciplined, ruthless, and efficient. It enforced Rome's will across the known world and made resistance seem futile. Yet power alone could not secure loyalty forever. To keep the population obedient and distracted, Rome offered something else: spectacle, belief, and illusion. And for that, we must step into the arenas, temples, and rituals that shaped the Roman mind. Chapter 5. Entertainment, Faith, and Control. Power in the Roman Empire was not maintained by armies alone. It was sustained by spectacle, belief, and carefully crafted illusion. While soldiers guarded borders and laws shaped behavior, the minds of the people were controlled through entertainment and faith, two forces as powerful as any legion. At the center of Roman entertainment stood the great arenas. The Colosseum loomed over the city like a monument to violence and unity. Tens of thousands gathered inside its stone walls, rich and poor seated together, watching blood spill onto sand. Gladiators fought for survival. Criminals were executed, and wild animals from distant lands were unleashed upon helpless victims. Death became performance, and the crowd demanded more. These games were not random cruelty. They were deliberate, emperors-sponsored spectacles to win loyalty and distract from hardship. Free entry, free food, and unforgettable violence kept unrest quiet. As long as the people were entertained, they questioned less. Rome understood something timeless. A distracted population is easier to rule. Gladiators themselves became symbols. Though enslaved and disposable, some gained fame and admiration. Their strength and endurance reflected Rome's own image. Brutal, disciplined, unstoppable. Victory in the arena was fleeting. Survival was uncertain. Yet the roar of the crowd gave meaning to suffering. Beyond the arenas, chariot races ignited obsession. Teams inspired loyalty stronger than politics. Riots erupted over race outcomes. For a moment, identity shifted from class or citizenship to color and faction. Rome allowed this passion because it redirected anger away from the state. Religion played an equally powerful role. Roman faith was not about a single god, but many, each governing a part of life. Gods of war, love, harvest, home, and fate filled the city. Temples stood on every corner. Rituals structured daily life. People prayed not for salvation, but success, protection, and favor. Religion reinforced loyalty. The emperor was seen as chosen by the gods, sometimes even divine himself. Worship of the imperial image became an act of obedience. To reject Rome's gods was to reject Rome itself. Faith and politics were inseparable. Priests interpreted signs and omens. Sacrifices were made before battles, elections, and public decisions. Victory proved divine approval. Defeat demanded more rituals or more blood. Superstition was not weakness, it was policy. Public executions reinforced fear. Criminals were punished publicly, often in brutal ways. Justice was visible and unforgettable. The message was clear. Rome rewards obedience and destroys resistance. Yet even belief had limits. New religions quietly spread through the empire, offering hope beyond power and spectacle. These movements challenged Rome's authority by promising loyalty to something greater than the state. At first, they were tolerated. Later, they were feared. Entertainment, faith, and fear formed a triangle of control. The people were fed, distracted, and watched. Rebellion became rare. Loyalty felt natural, but control, through illusion, is fragile. When spectacle loses its power and faith begins to fracture, cracks widen. The empire could command bodies, but controlling belief was harder. Rome at its height believed it had mastered both. Yet beneath the cheering crowds and smoking altars, tension grew. The cost of maintaining control increased. The illusion demanded constant reinforcement. And as the empire expanded, the weight of its own greatness became heavier to carry. To understand Rome's future, we must look beneath the gold, to the cracks forming under the surface of power. Chapter 6. Cracks beneath the gold. At its height, the Roman Empire appeared eternal. Its borders stretched across continents, its armies stood undefeated, and its cities shone with marble and gold. To those living within it, Rome felt unbreakable, yet history is rarely undone by sudden collapse. It is weakened slowly, by quiet cracks hidden beneath the surface. The empire had grown too large to manage easily. Messages from distant provinces took weeks or months to reach Rome. Governors ruled far from oversight, abusing power and enriching themselves. Corruption became common, not because Rome lacked laws, but because enforcing them across such vast distances became impossible. The machinery of empire still functioned, but less smoothly than before. Economic pressure mounted, endless wars demanded endless funding, taxes increased, farmers struggled. Inflation weakened currency as coins were diluted with cheaper metals. Trust in the economy slowly eroded. What once felt like prosperity began to feel like burden. The army, once Rome's greatest strength, became its greatest expense. Maintaining borders across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa drained resources. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Loyalty shifted from the state to individual generals. Civil wars erupted not from foreign invasion, but from Roman hands fighting Roman brothers. Leadership grew unstable. Emperors rose and fell at alarming speed. Some ruled wisely, others ruled briefly. Assassinated by gods they were meant to command. Power no longer felt sacred. It felt dangerous. The throne became a prize won through violence, not legitimacy. Cultural unity weakened as Rome absorbed countless peoples and beliefs. Shared identity faded. New religions challenged traditional authority. Old gods lost influence. Loyalty fractured. What it meant to be Roman became unclear. Borders grew restless. Enemies learned Roman tactics. Pressure increased along frontiers. Rome could still defeat its enemies, but not everywhere, and not forever. The illusion of control demanded constant reinforcement, more games, more rituals, more force. But the people sensed change. Fear replaced confidence. Survival replaced ambition. Rome did not fall in a single moment. It eroded. Piece by piece, decision by decision, victory by victory that demanded more than it returned. And yet, Rome's legacy endured. Its roads, laws, language, and ideas shaped civilizations long after its power faded. The empire fell, but Rome never truly disappeared. At its height, Rome ruled the world. In its decline, it taught the world a lesson. No empire is immune to time.